Hi, I'm Stephen Van Tassel. You're listening to Living the Wildlife, discussing all things related to vertebrate pest control as part of the Pest Geek podcast family. Hi everyone, Stephen Van Tassel here, wildlife control consultant, bringing you another episode of Living the Wildlife as part of the Pest Geek podcast family. Hey, glad to have you on board. I hope you had a great week. Mine was slow, which I guess was okay. I got a chance to really work on some PowerPoints to really refine them. But otherwise, it was kind of dragging along here a little bit. But nevertheless, if you're new to the show, understand that Living the Wildlife provides research-based information on all things related to vertebrate pest control. That is, animals that have a backbone. So we're glad to have you. Glad to have you here. Do take a few moments, if you would, to subscribe to the channel, and you can reach me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. Would love to hear your thoughts about future shows, about this show, comments, criticisms, and if you know of a topic that you'd like to have, and perhaps you would like to be on the show, definitely reach out. Love to hear from you. Love having guests on the show, because I think there's a lot of great information out there that would be nice to get out to a wider audience. But nevertheless, you can reach me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. Well, just spotlighting one of the books that I've published, one, The Practical Guide to the Control of Feral Cats. As many of you know, if you're new to the industry, you will know soon enough that free-range cats are a significant hazard and problem to wildlife control operators. And for those states and areas where they allow you to manage them, it would be great if you would do so. I look at feral cats as proof that Americans don't believe in it like the environment, because we let cats roam free and they ravage everything in sight. People think I hate cats. That's not true. I actually have a cat, but my cat is an indoor cat, so he doesn't go outside unless we're with him. So nevertheless, check it out, and of course we have other publications available on the website as well as and other services, including some of you may be involved in training and you're looking for someone to tweak your PowerPoints to make them a little bit snazzier and better accepted by your audience in the sense of following educational design. We'd love to hear from you as well. You can reach me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. All right, enough of all that. Let's get on with the topic today. And believe it or not, my topic today is on thermal imaging cameras, the infrared cameras that you get like from FLIR to tell you that there's heat sensing. People think you can see through walls with them. Well, not true, but they do have a role in the wildlife control field. Now, a lot of this technology really wasn't that available when I was doing a lot of field work back in the day, doing a lot of structural wildlife control. But the part of that was they were available, but the prices were just enormous. But the technology has really gotten better, and individuals, some of the companies out there are beginning to use some thermal imaging. Some of your larger companies or older companies have certainly reached out and started purchasing some of these, especially as the prices have come down to the $400 to $800 range, and they have found success with these particular products in helping. Now, I want to be clear, you do not need to have one. I did a lot of work in wildlife control that I didn't have one, right? So it wasn't available. So we don't want to sometimes we like our toys, right? So you don't want to just simply buy one to have another toy lying around. These thermal imaging devices, or FLIR is probably the big name that you might be familiar with. They do have a place in pest control, and so you have to sort of evaluate their role for you. Now, here, this particular article from Teledyne FLIR talks about these particular products and what their role is, and they're talking about insect identification, like with termites, finding the moisture levels in walls, help you identify where that nest might be, that that nest. Now, I'm not an insect person, but I'm just simply pointing out that that's certainly going to be one use for them. But if you scroll down a little bit more, it gets into things of like hornets and social insects, and then it even gets down into the rodent area as well, if memory serves here. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, there it is, the rodent section. So you can see the heat signature that is left when rodents are in a nest, that because these devices rely on temperature differential, right? So you're not seeing through walls, although you can get that impression. You're not seeing through walls. You're doing is you're seeing temperature difference as exhibited on the surface of those walls. So when that rodent is resting on the sheetrock in the ceiling, it's heating up that point on the sheetrock or on that ceiling, and that's ultimately going to have a different temperature signature from the surrounding sheetrock. And if you have a sensitive enough camera, it will detect that difference. Now, how do you evaluate what you need for a FLIR camera? Well, the first thing you want to do is determine, is this something that you really need, right? And so are you doing enough work to justify its use? And if you are, well, then it's certainly something to think about. The prices can be somewhere around $400 for the one that works with a cell phone, whether it be an Android or whether it be a iPhone. They have this available, and so it's basically uses a wireless technology to send the images over to your phone. That's part of the reason why it's so much cheaper. But it is certainly inexpensive enough to use. Now, is it a sufficient sensitivity to be practical? So here's the next article. So let me give you the first article here. First article here is from FLIR.com. Discover professional tools detecting pests with thermal imaging. What I would suggest you do is just go to FLIR and in the search bar put in pests, and it'll come up as one of the links there. Detecting pests with thermal imaging. Very useful article, very helpful, even if you don't buy anything from FLIR. I'm not being sponsored by FLIR. They haven't reached out to me to do this podcast. I'm not making any money on this. I'm simply wanting you to be more informed about this technology, so in case if you get to a point in your business where it might be helpful for you, that you kind of make an informed choice. Because again, the technology continues to improve and prices continue to come down, and so it might get down to your price point. Whether it'll get below $400, I don't know. But you may be getting, it may be like computers where the prices don't drop as much as the power of the computer continues to improve at the same price point. So that may happen. In other words, that $400 may be the lowest price point, but each generation gets better and better and better. So a $400 device today is, be basically garbage, although I'm being very hyperbolic there, where in a few years it's still going to cost $400, but you're getting twice the machine. I'm just throwing out some ideas because FLIR definitely seems to be constantly working on improving their materials. They kind of seem to be one of the big dogs, but there are other companies out there as well. Just do your research. But what you're looking for, of course, is two things primarily when you're thinking about FLIR or infrared thermal imaging technology. The first one is resolution of your screen, right? So what are the pixels on your screen that you're going to get? And the next one is how sensitive can it detect temperature? So what's that range because you're looking for differences in temperature. So they have another page about the importance of thermal sensitivity, and the acronym is NETD. NETD. And so what that stands for, let me see if I can find it here. It's noise equivalent temperature difference. That's, talk about a technical term there, right? Noise equivalent temperature difference. Now, what it means for us is that the more sensitive or the lower the number of NETD, the more sensitive it is to detecting temperature differences. So the lower it is, it's because sometimes with wildlife, right, you may not have a great difference. Let's say you're trying to find a bat in a room. Well, the bat, it doesn't have a nest in the room, right? Because bats don't have nests, but the bat may not have been sitting in one spot for the needed time for it to begin to heat up to have a big enough temperature difference. What happens if the room is already 90 degrees because it's in the middle of the summer? Are you going to have enough temperature difference to tell that the bat's even there, right? So these thermal imagers tend to work better when there's a warm object in a cold room, right? Because that's going to stand out like a candle in the middle of darkness, right? But have a candle in the middle of daylight, it's harder to see the light from the candle because it's being overwhelmed by the light from the sun. Same thing when it comes to heat. So this can be difficult. So you're going to need to have a product that is more sensitive if you're wanting to get to that level of sensitivity. But of course, the more sensitive it is, the more pixels you have, those are the two variables, the more expensive it gets, right? So number of pixels and what's the NETD? How is it, a low or high number? You want a low number, as low as you can get. And so this article discusses that. Now here's where they point out the difference. Notice they said the importance of thermal sensitivity, the NETD. Notice, let me blow this up here so you folks can see it. Okay, I'm getting this right off their website, right? So the lower the NET value, it says, which is measured by millikelvins, kelvins is a measure of heat, the better the sensor can register small temperature differences. Notice, when you get down to a below 20 millikelvins, you get to excellent sensitivity, but you're going to pay for that. Let's scroll down a little bit more. Here's an example where they give you two pictures. Both have the same number of pixels, but they don't have the same number of temperature sensitivity. So the more sensitive the camera is to temperature, the more granular the picture is going to be. So it's going to be more refined. So notice you have the same image. This looks like a woman in the distance standing in a parking lot. Notice how it's kind of blurry in the left side with a thermal sensitivity of 50 millikelvins. Go to the one to the right at 35 millikelvins and notice how sharp that picture becomes. Why? Because you're getting greater sensitivity on how it can detect temperature difference. Remember, these products all rely on temperature difference. If you don't have temperature difference, you won't see it. So it's going to be invisible. Okay, so you've got to have temperature difference in order to find it. So this is something for you to think about. So notice here you have a 640 by 480 thermal resolution, and the two cameras, both same resolution. One has a 50 millikelvins, one has a 35 millikelvins. The 35 millikelvins is going to be a better camera than the 50, right? But is that price point. So what does this ultimately mean for you? So you're not basically, Stephen, I don't want to be an expert in this, I just want to get one that works. Well, in this situation, you want to think about the class C. Let me make sure, I got to look something up here to make sure I'm not talking out of turn. Yes. So a colleague recommended to me the FLIR C7. So let's take a look for that. The FLIR C7. See if it's still available. Okay. The FLIR C7. Oh, it doesn't look like it is. Well, let's go with products here. FLIR C series. Maybe I should just go this. FLIR C. All right. So this is the C5. Now here you look at that $2,000. So I don't know why the C7, this is some older information. I do have something newer. The Fleur 1. Let's go with that one. Problem is the technology keeps changing all the time. So let's go with this. Fleur 1. Here we go. One edge. Now this is the one that works with an iPhone or an Android. And this one, when I talk, it's only $300, so it's a lot, that's a little bit cheaper. When I talked with the sales rep, he thought this could be used for people who are doing some pest control stuff. But again, it may only be enough for some larger animals, let's say maybe a raccoon pups, because you tend to have 3 to 5 in one particular area. It may be useful, but sometimes just finding things like moisture may be important too. Maybe the animal's urine or urine stains that have occurred, because again, you might get that temperature difference because there's moisture there making it cooler than the surrounding items. This is certainly one that you may want to check out or try to learn more about. The other product that is available, and that is the Fleur E54 or the E86. Now the E series is very sensitive. It's used for building inspection. Let's go Fleur E. The Fleur E. We go with the E8 Pro. Now here you go. This is going to be a little pricey here. I hate these pop-ups that keep going. See, now you're starting to get, it's on sale. All right, $3,000, but you're getting a pretty high sensitivity here, and it's used for people checking out electricity. And you're getting a bundle. You have different software that will come with it as well. And it uses multispectral dynamic imaging, which I believe is where it gives you a regular picture and it overlays the regular picture over the infrared picture to help you identify things better on at the site, so that when you're looking at a wall or you're looking at a room, you're able to identify the furniture better, right? Because it overlays these two things. And so clearly there is some technology there. So you're going to get what you pay for. It's certainly something to think about. Do I think you should run out and purchase one today? No. But if you find yourself, you're looking like, oh, I'd like to try to improve my inspection skills or something and maybe just see how this would work, $300 is not a huge cost. I may purchase one just to see how I can use it. My challenge is I don't do enough structural work to make it worthwhile, right? To test it for what you guys are going to be using it for. Don't be offended, ladies, if you're listening as well. It's just, this is a male-dominated field. So so it's something for you to think about. If you've used the product, I would love to hear from you in terms of what your experience is. So look at things that are in the C series and then maybe the E series if you're really looking to ramp it up. But understand you want to evaluate products on the basis of a resolution. That's the pixels per inch, 480 by 640, something like that. But also how sensitive is it to detecting temperature differences, and those are going to be key elements. So if you do a lot of home inspections, if you do a lot of work, it may be another tool in your toolbox, particularly if you're trying to find that nest, that mysterious job. And so you have to ask the question, are you going to get your money back from it? All right, so something for you to think about. I'd love to hear from you. You can definitely reach out to me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com, wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. Would love your feedback on this, because I think this is an area, as the technology continues to improve, this may be a way to really speed up inspections on the field. Now, it could be a game changer, but again, Don't let technology make you lazy to miss something that could be obvious and right there. Sometimes we rely on technology and we lose some of those foundational skill sets we need in our inspection. So we call it in the medical field, they call it the technological imperative, so that we're going to use a tool when perhaps touching the patient would give you as much information, but the technology allows you to charge a bigger price, right? And there are times where people will use the technology to create this aura of mystery, and so therefore when you're charging more prices for the client, that may be something you want to do, but nevertheless it feels a little cagey at times, rather than it really being something that's necessary for certain limited jobs. That finding that spot where the mouse nest may be in the wall, or maybe trying to locate a bat in a cool room that came in and you can't find it manually. Those would be some of those rare moments where the tool could really be a game changer for you. So something to think about. Check out that information on FLIR. I would recommend these articles for you: Detecting Pests with Thermal Imaging. And then the other article, let me get back to it. The Importance of Thermal Sensitivity, NETD, for Detection Accuracy. Those two articles, not very long, well worth your time if you didn't catch everything that I said here, but to kind of help illustrate and explain how to evaluate the products, and would love your feedback. Well, you've been listening to Living the Wildlife as part of the Pest Geek podcast family. Do hope you take a few moments and subscribe to the channel. I would definitely love to hear your feedback about shows, about suggestions for future talks. Perhaps you think of some guests that I could have on the show. Would love to hear your thoughts on that. And yes, even criticisms. Would love to hear that as well. You can reach me again at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. That's wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. Would love to hear from you. And you've been listening to Living the Wildlife as part of the Pest Geek podcast family. Why do we call it Living the Wildlife? Well, because we want you to live the wildlife, not be the wildlife. Take care, everyone. This is the disclaimer for Wildlife Control Consultant and Pest Geek podcast for Living the Wildlife podcast. Always follow national, state, provincial, and local laws when using pesticides and or other control methods to manage pests. Wildlife Control Consultant, LLC, Pest Geek Podcast, Living the Wildlife Podcast, Stephen M. Van Tassel, or their or his affiliates are not responsible for followers' use of the information provided here.